Good evening. If everyone will, please make sure that you silence your devices as we start our meeting this afternoon. Okay. Good evening again, and welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting of the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board. We will begin with our invocation and our Pledge of Allegiance. The invocation will be led by School Board Member Mark Ballou, and Pledge of Allegiance will be led by School Board Member Patrick Martin.
Heavenly Father, we ask for your guidance and wisdom this evening. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group, and nurture the bonds of community. Continue to remind us that we are here in the pursuit of truth and the service of others. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Our meeting is now called to order. And if we would have a roll call of our members.
District 2, President Lannis.
Present.
District 3, Vice President Powell.
Present.
District 1, Mr. Blue.
Here.
District 4, Ms. Stewart.
Present.
District 5, Mr. Lewis.
Present.
District 6, Mr. Rust.
Present.
District 7, Mr. Gode.
Present.
District 8, Ms. Kennison.
Present.
District 9, Mr. Martin.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. We will begin with the update from the superintendent.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I wanted to first start off this week has been very tough for some of us in the community and I wanted to send out our wishes to Woodlawn Elementary. I'd like to take the time to extend our deepest condolences to the family and friends and classmates of Sadie Davila. She was a first grade student at Woodlawn Elementary. We ask that you continue to keep her family and our school community in your thoughts as we work through this difficult time that community has had. During the incident, I did go down there with our staff and our team to help support, and we appreciated the care and leadership of not only the school leader, but also all the teachers that were there that worked on wrapping their hands around all of our students in that community. So we just want to keep them in our thoughts. This past Tuesday, we celebrated our Student of the Year. Please join me in congratulating our students for elementary, middle, and high school. I'll say their name and what school they came from. Natalie Thomas, who is from Bernard Terrace. Let's give them a little hand. Tristan Carter from Inspire Charter. Amaya Johnson from Westdale Middle. Alicia Davis from Inspire Charter. Ralston Grays from Baton Rouge High Magnet. And Ashley Smith from Helix Mentorship STEAM Academy. We super excited about the community. I think we had almost 250 parents that were there. And also thank all the partners and the staff that made it possible. It was great to see us celebrate students as they continue to work hard towards their success. On another note, we are looking forward to the upcoming MLK Day holiday. We will be celebrating on Monday at the citywide service hosted by Mayor President Broome and the NAACP at Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church at 9 a.m. We'll also be with Park Elementary for their celebration at the Baton Rouge General Mid-City Atrium at 4:30 p.m. Please note all EBR school and sites will be closed on Monday, January 16th in observance of Martin Luther King Day. And on the last note, I wanted to end on this. We have some wonderful news that I'm going to ask our executive director of the foundation to please come up and share with the board and the public.
Good evening. Let me be the first to say, good evening, Dr. Narcisse. Good evening, President Lannis. Good evening, Vice President Powell, and all the members of the school board. My name is Kathleen Sarsfield. I am here as the executive director for the foundation. And just about an hour ago, we had the privilege, Dr. Narcisse and my board president, Padma Vatsavi, and some of our leadership in the school system, have received a check from the Kiewit-Bow joint venture for $55,000 in support of our school district. So we'd like to say a big thanks. They are actually the joint venture that is going to be widening the I-10 corridor. And I asked them, and as I always do for all donors, how would you most like to be recognized for this gift? Because those answers come in all ways, shapes, and forms. And they said, kind of joking, kind of not, if people who are caught in traffic could just understand that we support the community, that would be the best thanks you could give me. So we just want to say thanks to Bow Brothers Construction, Kiewit Construction, and their joint venture together for supporting our school kids as we move forward into this school year.
Yes,
Thank you.
let's give them a hand. I always say anytime people are giving money to our students, it's always a great thing. We're excited about the work that we're going to be doing with them also in this space of workforce development for our students. And so, Madam Vice President, that is my report.
Thank you so much, Dr. Narcisse. Now, we don't have to have any type of motion or anything for that, correct?
No, ma'am, you'll read item C1 in.
Awesome. Okay, so we are moving to item C, items for consideration. And so, of course, let's take a look at the first item. Item number 1, Cooperative Endeavor Agreement. And it reads as follows: consideration of a request for the approval of a cooperative endeavor agreement between the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board and Louisiana Department of the Treasury and the State of Louisiana in the amount of $50,000 for Act 170 of the 2022 regular legislative session, state aid to local government entities to provide internship opportunities for 12th grade internship workforce development pilot program, strategic alignment, student achievement. All right, can I get a motion for this particular item? Okay. All right, so it has been moved by Board Member Gode and seconded by Board Member Martin. All right. Okay, are there any questions or comments from the board? Okay. Seeing none, are there any comments from the public? All right. Okay, so there are no cards. All right, so are there any comments from the board or questions? Yes. Board Member Gode.
Thank you. I just wanted to, I don't know who's responsible for working this through, but just for everyone to recognize that, we have done in this district are leading the state in our efforts around internships to provide opportunities for high school seniors to not only earn a little bit money, but to also learn a lot about the soft skills that come with work and having a job, because in our internship program, not only are they working at the various businesses, but also they are assigned staff people to work with them, to teach them things like showing up on time, dress codes, how to fill out a resume, all of those soft skills that go into that. So I just wanted to applaud our district. I think we're doing a good job on that, and getting this kind of benefit will help us even expand that, because if I remember, our goal next year is for 1,000 interns coming up. So I just didn't want that to go without any comment. Thank you.
Any additional comments from the board? Madam Secretary, please call the vote.
Please vote. The motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 2, service agreement. Consideration of a request for the approval of an agreement between the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board and Dr. David K. Lurch, Educational Consulting Incorporated, in the amount of $36,200 to review district documentation, monitor academic and financial progress for 2022-2023 MSAT grant, strategic alignment, operational excellence, funding source, MSAT grant. All right, can I get a motion, please? Okay, it has been moved by Board Member Baloo.
Second.
Okay, all right, and it has been seconded by School Board Member Rust. All right, are there any questions from the board? Okay. All right, seeing none, any questions or comments from the public? All right. Any additional comments from the board? Okay, yes. All right. Board Member Kennison.
I'd like to make a substitute motion to send without recommendation.
All right, is there a second for this substitute motion? Okay, it has been moved by Board Member Kennison and seconded by Board Member Stewart to entertain a substitute motion to
Defer.
defer the item. All right,
Yeah. For clarity, the motion was to send without recommendation.
okay, so the motion is to move without recommendation. Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
okay, so back to board comments. Okay, all right. Okay, all right, Board Member Martin.
If I could, just for ask Mr. Shamlin to clarify for all of us new folks what a motion to move forward without recommendation means.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Martin. I was waiting for someone to ask that question. So the board members have an option sometimes to send an item to, as you know, this is a committee of the whole. Any item approved at this meeting is sent to the regular meeting for consideration on the consent agenda. An option or an alternative to that would be a motion to send without recommendation, which would be sending without a yay or nay, but sending it to the regular meeting as a standalone item for additional consideration. Oftentimes, that motion is made when additional information may be needed or clarification by one or more board members. And so, essentially, we're sending it to the committee of the whole, neither yay or nay, but to appear on the agenda for final consideration and further discussion. Does that help?
Yes, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other comments from the board? Okay, we will now go to the public. All right. Seeing none, any additional comments or questions from the board? Okay. Okay, so Madam Secretary, we will now call for a vote.
Please vote.
Point of order. Mr. Shamlin, it might be good to, since we have many new board members, to tell them exactly what they're voting on and what yay or nay means, because a yay is not in favor of the item. A yay is to send it to the next meeting without recommendation.
That's correct, and I
Okay.
apologize. I didn't know if
I
that's
just,
my explanation.
I may be insulting everyone, but I just
Yeah.
want to make sure people understand a yay vote
Yeah.
means to send it without recommendation.
Yes.
Not yes for the motion.
That's correct.
Everybody good with their vote? Okay. The motion carries.
Thank you. So at this time, do we move on to the next? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Okay, so now we are at item 3, professional services contracts, federal. Consideration of a request for the approval of professional services contracts between the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board and the following: A, Resourceful Consulting LLC in the amount of $90,000 for implementation of a comprehensive year one plan to expand access to early childhood education to children under 5, strategic alignment, student achievement, funding source, ESSER 2. Alphabet B, District Management Group, LLC, in the amount of $48,210 to provide services to improve literacy development, strategic alignment, student achievement, funding source, comprehensive literacy, state development, CLSD, and CIR/UIR 0 to 5. All right, can I have a motion? Okay, it has been moved by Board Member Gode. Is there a second? Second. Okay, it has been seconded by Board Member Rust. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Okay,
Ms. Powell,
yes.
with this grant, with this endeavor, will there be certain schools or certain early childhood education sites? For example, I know Melrose Elementary is one.
Okay, all right, Dr. Narcisse?
Who will get, I'm basically going to ask, who's going to get the money? Okay.
Yes, hold on. I will call up Ms. Shino Webb, our Chief of Literacy, who is over early childhood and literacy, will come up to answer that for you, board member.
Member Lannis and Vice President Powell. Yes. The schools for the DM pilot for the district management, I just wanted to clarify.
Okay.
Yes, for the 5 pilot schools, they are Melrose, Twin Oaks, as well as Claiborne, Northeast, and Sharon Hills.
And all of these schools are in desperate need of that, correct?
Yes, these were the schools that were selected by the bottom SPS, or the school performance score. And so what we wanted to make sure that we can target them in a 10-week challenge to provide prescriptive interventions to make sure that they are on level so they can go ahead and do well on that LEAP test.
Okay. And so will we be getting periodically be updated on their progress?
Yes. So with the district management group, we have weekly check-in meetings with them. And so we're reviewing their data results to make sure they're improving. If they're not, their interventions are changed.
If I could just add to that, Board Member Lewis, the district we use are quarterly benchmarks, which we use for elementary's DIBELS, and for grades 3 to 11 is ANET ELA, and we use that for quarterly benchmarks. And under this group, they do weekly checks, which are much more formative in classrooms. And so we check not only the progress they do weekly, but also on the quarterly benchmark, which helps us to know that they're on track to do good when the LEAP test comes.
Has anything like this been in place in our other schools? This is brand new.
No, this is new.
Pilot.
We piloted this program,
okay.
and if the way that the data is going, if it continues to do well, our goal is to expand this across schools that are struggling.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
President Lanus?
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Well, first and foremost, greetings to all of our new board members for our first official meeting together. I just had a quick request because we have new board members. Can we please get them caught up to speed on all of our early learning sites, as well as all of the programs that we're currently using, just so they can know and pinpoint if there's any inside of their district, or just if they have any additional questions or comments or concerns?
Yes, on our early learning centers. So currently in East Baton, let me give you a little bit of background information as you see this big smile on my face. For East Baton Rouge, we are the largest early childhood network in the state. We have about 96 plus or minus child care centers in there, so I can't name them all, but I definitely can send you a document of all of our child care sites. And in there, we have 44 of our elementary schools with pre-K programs. And with that being stated, we're proud that we are piloting micro centers. This is where we are using our sites that have space, and we partner with a licensed child care center. The licensed child care childcare centers are able to come into our space if they're highly qualified, meaning they have an excellent rating, because accountability is in the lap of early childhood to make sure that our students are ready for kindergarten. So we're partnering with Kids Carousel at Crestworth Elementary, as well as London Bridge at Westminster. These two are highly qualified, and we get the kids in at pre-K at 3 years old, free of charge, and they're able to matriculate over to our pre-K program, thus increasing our student enrollment.
And if we could just add to the board, as you know, there's 6 keys that we have been working to expand for the next couple of years. Early childhood education is one of the largest expansion that we're doing from 0 to 4. So kids are prepared to go through that pipeline and be ready for kindergarten.
Yes, sir. Okay. And we will send that information to you with all of our sites.
Shanoa, you could stay. I think there's another question.
Thank you. Board Member Rust?
Just to get some clarification, so I make sure I understand the item properly. In the item, item A for Resourceful Consulting LLC in the amount of $90,000. So it's for implementation of a comprehensive year 1 plan. So we already have this plan developed, and they're going to implement the plan. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, we do have Mr. Hamilton Jones. He's from Resourceful Consulting, and he'll give you a little bit of background information of our work that we've begun, and this is our 2nd year.
So if I could just set that up before, we have been working with the Early Childhood Network, which consists of government, Louisiana Policy Institute, Mr. Hamilton's a consultant, community stakeholders, and we've been working on this plan for about a year. And the goal has been to not only put dollars into early childhood, but to create a plan. And we charge Mr. Hamilton as a consultant with Louisiana Policy Institute to come up with a plan as we begin to implement, allocate dollars, resources, and strategies. So.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. So, I won't summarize all of the work we did, or I'll summarize it as succinctly as I can, but we went through a process over the course of last year with hundreds of stakeholders, from, parents with young children to childcare providers to educators in, early elementary, and a number of partners from the business community, from philanthropy, et cetera, and really got to a plan that is proposing by 2030 to double the number of children we serve birth through age 4. And, there's lots of research that shows if we can get to that earlier intervention, it really sets children up to be on track at kindergarten, reading on 3rd grade, reading on level by 3rd grade, and really succeeding from there on. And there are really 5 primary pillars to the plan. One is around expanding access and easier access for families. Right now, for a family who's born in with a child in East Baton Rouge Parish, there's really a myriad of, network to kind of try to even figure out where my child should go, where there's seats available. And so part of what we're really working on is a real coordinated system that makes that as easy as possible for families to interact with. The second strategy is, the second pillar of it is around educator recruitment and training. One of our greatest challenges across the nation right now to expand access to early childhood education is the workforce shortage. And it's particularly acute in early childhood education, in childcare, where often there's not the same level of benefits and compensation that even a kindergarten or pre-kindergarten teacher will get. So we have a number of partners that are coming together to help address that challenge, make sure we have a strong workforce pipeline, strong professional development and supports, because all of the research points to the importance of that educator and their interactions with the child as one of the most important things in terms of their early learning in those early years. The third is around family engagement and leadership. We know that families often don't fully understand what their options are, how it works, why I should consider early childhood education, at age 2 or 3. So there's real component around family engagement and leadership throughout the plan. The fourth is collaboration and communication. This is a parish-wide, citywide challenge. We know the school board alone cannot tackle this. No child care center alone can tackle this. We need the business community. We need philanthropy. We need multiple levels of government, and we all really need to be working from the same plan and ongoingly communicate. And that's actually a lot of what this year is about, is really getting that communication, those practices in place, that the accountability with all of it together. And then the fifth is really sustainable funding. We've been able to, with ARPA dollars and other federal relief dollars, ESSER dollars, we've been able to expand access. That funding is not eternal. And so we know we really want to look at additional funding to be able to make sure we are thinking as creatively and really as efficiently with the resource usage to be able to support that. And I'd welcome a chance to give a much more detailed briefing at a time that makes sense for you all, and appreciate the opportunity even just to talk about the plan.
Thank you.
Welcome.
If I can, I just want to say, as a parent that has benefited from pre-K 4 in our schools, how important it is to invest in these programs in our community, and I'm excited to see this plan implemented if approved. Thanks.
Thank you. Any additional comments from the board? Okay. All right. Board Member Kennison.
I'd like to make a substitute motion to send without recommendation. I would just like to get more information. I'd like to learn more about the programs, what's happening, but I like it.
Okay, it has been moved by Board Member Kennison for a substitute motion.
We'll need a second to that substitute motion.
I second it.
It's been seconded by Board Member Stewart.
For clarification, the motion is to move the entire item, both contracts, to the consent, to the regular meeting of the board without recommendation. Yes.
I need to say it differently.
No, that's, I just wanted to make sure that is indeed your motion. All right.
Okay, so it has been moved by Board Member Kennison and seconded by Board Member Stewart to send this particular item to the full board meeting without recommendation. Okay. Okay, board member comments. All right, any public comments? Okay, Dr. Feeney?
Thank you.
Dr. Feeney, please state your name for the record.
It is James Finney. I'm a constituent of Ms. Stewart. I appreciate the substitute motion, but I would like to suggest a friendly amendment for you to consider. And that would be to send both items separately without recommendation. And the reason is that typically things that have nothing to do with each other tend to get lumped under an item of federal contracts. And if you set the precedent now of every contract should stand on its own, then in future committees of the whole, perhaps they will each be considered separately. Because otherwise, what will happen later on down the road is there will be one especially problematic contract in a group of 6, and then somebody will want to pull the item, and then you'll have to consider whether to pass the whole thing or only part of it. And so just in the interests of this board being more effective than your predecessors, I would strongly encourage you to consider that your recommendation be to send both items forward as separate standalone items at the meeting next week. And I would hope that the administration takes the message that this board is expecting more thorough explanations. For example, a plan was mentioned. I could be mistaken, but I don't remember that that plan was attached as a backup, and it should have been. And that would have been an obvious thing to include. Regardless of whether a prior board approved a plan, this board has the right to amend that, reject it, ignore it, or adopt it with full enthusiasm. And while I still have 1 minute and 12 seconds, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Dr. Narcisse for some kind words that he expressed to my friends at Woodlawn. So thank you for reaching out, and you impressed several of us in the community with your quotes in the newspaper this weekend after Woodlawn's tragic loss of a student. So thank you for that, and please consider my request.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? All right. All right. Comments from the board? Mr. Ballou.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I'm going to vote against the substitute motion. I do agree with sending it to the full board, but I think we've got 2 weeks before the board meeting if we need more information. I don't see it as particularly controversial topic, and for efficiency's sake, I'd like to see it remain on the consent agenda, and then if anybody wants to have it pulled for further review at the board meeting, we can do it at that time. Thank you.
Board Member Martin.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I'd like to turn to our council again, since many, 6 of us, I believe, have never actually participated. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. Since many of us have never actually participated in the full board meeting, although we've all observed them, if you could explain to us the difference when we get to our actual board meeting between having this item have been reported without recommendation versus having it been reported with recommendation. Do you understand the question?
Yes, sir, I do.
you.
And so sending an item without recommendation has the effect of placing it on the regular meeting agenda as a standalone item for consideration. Sending it with recommendation or with a yay or an approval sends it to the regular meeting on what is called our consent agenda. And that agenda is comprised of all items approved tonight, and the board will generally take one vote to approve the consent agenda as a whole. Prior to that vote, any board member can request an item be pulled for separate consideration. And so at the regular meeting next week, ahead of the vote on the consent, the chair, Mr. Lannis, the chair of that meeting, would then ask the board members, all board members, if anyone has an item they would like to be pulled for additional discussion or separate discussion and separate consideration. At that time, each of you would be able to choose any number of items to be pulled for discussion and consideration. A vote will be taken on the consent agenda, and following that vote, each item pulled will be considered separately. So the effect, Mr. Martin, is if sent with recommendation, it sits on the consent agenda unless pulled by a board member. Does that answer your question?
That's very helpful. With that explanation, then I think I share the feelings of Board Member Ballou. I think there's plenty of time it'll simplify the process, assuming that all of our questions are answered satisfactorily, to leave it on the consent agenda. But if for whatever reason, for example, you weren't comfortable with that and still wanted to give individual attention, had more questions, then I would certainly support pulling it off of the consent agenda item at that time.
Point of clarification, and I believe that, Mr. Shamlin, you've answered this question already. But our full board meeting will not be in 2 weeks, correct? It will be next week.
It'll be next week, a week from tonight. Yes, ma'am.
President Lanus.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I'll be really quick. I just wanted to give a quick point of clarity. The way that we receive information over the course of the last week or so is not going to be the normal flow of information that you'll receive from leadership. As you all know, as some of you may know, we were in an awkward position where this is the first time we have never had board leadership before, and we had to vote on both positions. So a lot of the information that we were receiving kind of came on the back end. But moving forward, this will not be the normal flow of information, and you all have adequate time to get all points of clarity on all the agenda items. So just wanted to make sure I said that. Thank you.
Board Member Gode.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to also point out that Mr. Shamlin gave a very good explanation of being able to pull an item, but I just want to make sure every board member understands that an individual member can pull an item. It needs no second or anything else like that. So if there's an item on the consent agenda that you want to bring up for a regular vote, you can pull that without second or anything else. It's totally up to the individual board member. So just information. Thank you.
Okay, so there is a substitute motion on the floor, and Board Member Kennison.
So one more time to clarify, if you pull something at the meeting next week to discuss, it's still voted upon that day?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then a question I have for Dr. Narcisse, why are these two items together in the one we're currently discussing?
Well, we put all of the professional service contracts together. In each contract that we have under that gives the board member an opportunity to ask questions around that. So with any professional service contract that deal with federal dollars, we tend to put them all in one space.
So if you will, our secretary will lead us in a vote.
Please vote.
Madam Secretary, Madam Vice President, just for clarity, again, we're voting on the substitute motion.
Yes. on the
So a
substitute
yes
motion.
vote is to send it without recommendation. A nay vote is to go back to the original motion
Yes.
for consideration. Thank you.
The motion fails.
So going back to the original motion, and are we?
Vice President Powell, on the original motion, I believe the discussion was on the board. We had not yet gone to the audience, so we'll need to go to the audience on the original motion.
All right, any comments from the public?
Thank
Dr.
you. Again, I'm
King?
James Finney. My first comment is we, as the public, need to see what the votes were. Thank you. And then my additional comment is that I would encourage you all to vote no, because these aren't sufficiently explained. I don't believe that the administration will produce the required answers or additional backup in 1 week, not two, Mr. Ballou. Remember, it's a different schedule this month. And so I would encourage you to all vote no, or for somebody else to propose a substitute motion, perhaps to push this back to February. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the public? Okay, all right. Comments from the board? Seeing none, the secretary will lead us in a vote. And this is a vote on the original item.
Yes, ma'am.
Please vote. The motion carries.
Item 4, professional services, contracts, general fund. Consideration of a request for the approval of a professional services contract between the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board and Kids Orchestra in the amounts of $65,000 and $45,000 to provide services for the Kids Orchestra after-school program for 2022-2023. Strategic alignment, student achievement, funding source, general fund, ESSER, and fine arts, general fund. All right. Can I get a motion? Okay. Is there a second? Okay. It has been moved by Board Member Martin and seconded by Board Member Ballou. All right. Are there any comments from the board? Mr. Ballou.
Thank you. I know this, the Kids Orchestra isn't a new program. I was going back through my material. I was trying to find the last time we had it in effect. Did we have it last year? And I can't remember if there was a break because of COVID or anything.
Yes, we did have Kids Orchestra last year. Mr. Jeffrey, can you come up and share with the board what schools had it last year and also this year?
Right. Good afternoon, board. Last year we had the following schools that we actually have this year: Audubon Elementary, Magnolia Woods, Baton Rouge Flame, Dufrock, Wham. I think we had a few others as well, but because of funding, we could not offer the program to those schools. Kids Orchestra has been with us since I've been in this position for the past 5 years, and I think it was a few years before that. And this is a continuum that happens every year.
All right. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Board Member Lewis.
Mike, the Kids Orchestra is a great thing. I mean, it's long, it's documented, well documented that children who participate and take part in music, their math scores and things like that are going to increase.
Yes.
Okay? The only issue I have with it are the schools. All these schools are high-performing schools that are on your list. And I think there's lots of other underperforming schools where we really need to raise math scores and ELL scores. I think they would benefit somewhat more than, I mean, I'm not trying to say that all kids don't deserve this, but I think some of these other schools would benefit more. Actually, today I'm visiting a school and the teacher was sitting there tuning a bass guitar, waiting for her elementary school kids to come in the classroom. So we're doing that at a high-performing school already. Let's look at some lower-performing schools or some underperforming schools where the kids would benefit greatly from a kids' orchestra.
And with this program, and that's a great point, and I've been saying that since I've been here too as well, we do offer, this program is not offered just to those kids at those particular schools. Any child can go to those locations. We did used to bus kids from other schools that were low performing that could actually benefit from the program. But the biggest issue was the funding and transportation.
Okay, and I understand that was 2016. Was that during the flood?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
The flood's over. We got 600 buses. I think we can do a little something now instead of looking back. Let's look forward.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly.
Thank you. Okay. Board Member Rust.
I just want to make sure I understand. This is funding for current school year, 2022 to 23. Is that right?
Yes.
Is that correct? So how have we funded the previous portion of the school year for this program?
Right now, we have always started this program before we actually got the funding. So we are actually, Ms. Jody Han is basically going on our word that she will get the funding. This has been a program that has never been funded for our kids. So she loves the program just as much as we do, and she's basically just waiting.
Living on a prayer.
Yes. Yes, she is.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. And we waited so late because we added, thanks to our superintendent, we found more funding so we can offer more seats to kids as well. So that was another wait for that too.
If I could just add to that, there is many things we want to fund more. If we can get kid orchestra in all the schools, we would be able to do that. Unfortunately, there's not enough dollars to go around. But what we have invested since it's been almost 2 years now has been to work on expanding arts and music across. And our goal is to try to continue to give more kids opportunities and also figure out ways how we can figure out either transport kids if we can't get them to schools, because we have a lot of schools. So there's been ways to talk about that, but every one of those things costs additional dollars. So.
You're welcome.
I wanted to share as well, just for the sake of being a parent in regards to this conversation. My son has benefited many years from Kids Orchestra. He's now in high school. He was in second grade when he started with Kids Orchestra. I was unaware that there was a time period when funding was not provided. However, I do remember the many, many occasions where Kids Orchestra gave my son a scholarship to help his parent, who was a single parent, and trying to teach and trying to give my child as many different experiences as possible. So I just wanted to applaud and to say that, Kids Orchestra has been a viable part of our community. And for myself, I would love to see it return to schools that have not been able to be served. He was one of the students at Dufrock and then one of the students at Ryan Elementary. And of course, Ryan was not a part of that list that you just mentioned. So it would be great to expand those services. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Board Member Lanus.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Just a quick update. Just keep in mind that we also have a conservatory school that we have coming online. So a lot of these programs are going to front load and get our students prepared for when that school does open. Also, just a quick point of order. Just want you all to just be mindful of the time. Once you speak on the main item for 5 minutes, you're allotted 5 minutes. The only time you can speak again on that same item is if there's a substitute that's placed, which you will receive another 5 minutes. Or if there's an amendment to the main motion, you will receive 3 minutes. So you only get one time to speak unless we go to a sub or unless an amendment is made. Thank you.
For clarity, the board members have an opportunity to speak 5 minutes each round. So, as you know, the chair will start with the board, allowing the board comments on an item. You have 5 minutes. We'll then go to the audience. We'll come back to the board again. You have a second opportunity of 5 minutes. I'm sorry, 3 minutes. Thank you, sir. It's actually 5. I think so.
3 minutes is on the amended.
Yeah.
So.
And listen, what we'll do is we will get the board a copy of the board meeting rules of procedure that were approved about 6 months ago. We'll send you guys a copy of that so you'll have it, and there'll be some training on that as well.
Thank you so much.
There's currently a hard copy at your places if you are looking through the papers that I had gave y'all tonight.
Board Member Kennison.
Hi. Thank you so much for what you're doing. Thank you all for what you're doing in the arts. I think it's the arts are an extremely important part of a well-rounded education, almost more so sometimes than pencil to the paper. I think that the arts programs in EBR need massive funding. We need to change the game here. So this is going to be the beginning of a much bigger conversation. I love this idea. I love what you guys want to do. You guys are going to get tired of hearing this from me, but I would like to make a substitute motion. What are the words? To send without recommendation. It's not that I do not want this to move through, but I need to understand the budget a bit more and how much is allotted to the arts and make sense of the whole thing before we can start getting in there.
Thank you. So there is a substitute motion on the floor. And restate your motion for me, please.
Hold on. I'm going to learn it. I would like to make a substitute motion to send without a recommendation.
Okay, to send to the full board without recommendation. Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay, it has been moved by Board Member Kennison and seconded by Board Member Stewart. And we will return to comments from the board. Are there any comments at this time? All right. Thank you. Board Member Lewis.
You know, we toss around a lot of words up here, and I'm going to make it a point, as long as I'm sitting here, to not use the term low-performing schools. How about underperforming? Because if you tell someone long enough that you're in a low-performing school, then they're going to think they're in a low-performing school. They just need a little help. They're underperforming because all kids can perform. And I think music is a tremendous way to do that. I mentioned being at a school today. It was performing arts over on Acadian. And the teacher is tuning a bass guitar. And I wish I could have sat there and watched the kids in that class, Center for Visual Performing Arts. If we're doing it for 450 some odd children over there, I really think we can find a way to do it for more in our underperforming schools. Not low, but underperforming. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments from the board? Comments from the public? Okay, Dr. Feeney?
Thank you. You have an opportunity and an obligation to send a strong message to the administration with the way you place your vote here in a moment. The proposal is to have you, the original proposal from the administration is for you to say, okie dokie, to a request that you finally formalize an agreement that may have started in August, at least unofficial obligation incurred to the school district for services that may have started in November. That's a problem. Generally, you should come to an agreement before a vendor comes in and provides services. I don't think there was an emergency that would have kept that from happening. Second problem that I have with the way this is presented is one of the backup memos suggests there are 4 schools. One says there are 5 schools. I'm going to assume that the one with 5 schools that matches what Mr. Joffrion stated is probably the correct one. But you're paying the administration a lot of money to get all the details right. Next point. The proposal is for $40,000 from one pot of money and $65,000 from another pot. And no mention of where the other $220,000 is or isn't coming, because there's also a total of $330,000. Unless that's explained, this has no business getting your approval. And just for some context, my math degree was paid for by the ability that I could play piano. Arts are absolutely important. And the most important point, the nitpicky details that this administration has been violating for years are less important than my following point. The 4 or 5 schools are all south of Florida and west of Sherwood Forest, and 2 of the 4, Flame and Wham, are among, 4 or 5. Flame and Wham are 2 of the 4 least impoverished schools in the district. And Mr. Joffrion just said, we used to serve other schools, presumably more impoverished. We can't afford to serve the poor kids, but we're going to take care of the rich kids. That's my interpretation of what he said. And we used to provide busing so the poor kids could at least go across town. It would cost them a couple extra hours out of their week, but at least they had some access. Now, sorry, can't afford that. So this conservatory that may or may not someday happen, the other high school that's 4 blocks from Broadmoor High, is going to be loaded with children of privilege. And if you live north of Florida, tough. Put this off for a week. If they can't do any better, vote no until they get it right. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional comments from the public? Yes.
Hi, my name is Jody Yane, and I've been the Executive Director of Kids Orchestra for the last 10 years of its 12-year existence. Since I've been in since I've served as executive director, we've been in East Baton Rouge Parish School District, whether we were funded or not. We are a 501c3, and we have a lot of passion about bringing music to all children. Just answering a couple of, I just heard some comments I wanted to comment on. First of all, one contract is for $45,000 and it has 4 schools on it. The other one is for $65,000 and it has 5 schools on it. We put 1 school on extra on the contract that had the more funding. We thought that would make sense. We have in the past, for most of the Life of Kids Orchestra, we have served underperforming schools. And we did have a busing program, and it was paid by us, and I had a funder who paid for it, and it was over $200,000 a year that we paid for busing. I lost the funder, and also I lost the charter busing company. The school district at that time would not work with us and would not fund busing from the school district. Then we had the 2016 flood that happened, and then there was an absolute no, because there were so many buses that were lost. I know I'm running over, I'm sorry. We have kept the schools that we have because there are students in those schools that also need scholarships. Yes, they're well-funded schools, but there are underserved families in those schools. And we offer more, we have over 65% of our children, actually more than that. It's closer to about 78% that get scholarships from us, because our tuition is based on household income. Not everybody pays the same thing. We struggle every day to ensure that our students here in East Baton Rouge Parish will get music in the after-school program. Thank you for the support. I love the comments from all of you. Thank you so much. And I'm so happy that all of you recognize the importance of music in a child's life, especially in the after-school time. Out-of-school time is so important, and what a great time to bring music into their lives. I thank you very much for your support. And yes, we did start. We started in September. We started the day after Labor Day, because no matter what, we're going to be bringing those 55 lessons to the kids, plus at least 2 concerts in the schools, plus another 8 community concerts, and sometimes we have more than that, to those kids. And I just beg, borrow, and steal. Well, no, I don't steal. But thank goodness I have wonderful people on our board, like Mr. Marvin Broom, who helps us out. So thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Thank you, and consideration.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Corley? Ms. Corley, please state your name for the record.
Good afternoon. My name is Karonda Corley, proud parent and disabilities advocate nationally. This is my son, Corrence Corley, who's in a real giddy mood because I woke him up to come and attend this meeting. But he's a future self-advocate, courtesy of East Baton Rouge Parish School System. First and foremost, I would like to make a formal public records request on all the information that she just stated. Because the schools that is listed, she said 9 schools. None of those schools are majority underserved children. We have so many schools that's unserved and underserved. Let me talk about Northeast Elementary, who just received an art teacher and a music teacher within the last couple of months, right before Christmas break. My child is not going to benefit from this. He would never benefit from it. You know why? Because our children with disabilities would never be part of the population that actually get a chance to attend that orchestra program. That's a problem because you're taking it out of the general fund, which Title II actually goes into general fund. Title II is your ADA money, American Disabilities Act. If you don't know it, you received an email from me about American Disabilities Act. Our children have rights, federally protected rights, and so does their mamas and fathers too. As his parent, he is supposed to be afforded the same opportunity as every regular ed student in our school district. What about Lil Johnny or Lil May May or any other children that are unserved that are sitting in Crestworth Elementary? Let me talk about some of those other schools, Glen Oaks Middle. These kids are supposed to be afforded those opportunities, but it seemed to never make it over to that side. It don't seem to make it to the areas in which it's supposed to. Polk Elementary, oh, I'm sorry, does it even exist anymore as Polk Elementary? I think it got a new name. Park Elementary, Capitol Elementary, Melrose Elementary, and the list go on and on. They are not receiving these types of programs, and they should. Our children should. Let's look at those scores and let's make it a priority for every single child to actually be able to be a participant in a program such as this. If we cannot make it to where all children can participate, then none of them should. Because it's all about every student every day. Equality and equity is always supposed to be at the forefront. And right now it's not. When you're saying some, but not all. A few, but not a couple. That's a problem. We're not here to service a fraction. We're here to service all. And until you can do that, it needs to be sent with a lot of recommendations. How many children with disabilities are going to be able to participate? That's the recommendation I ask for this body. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments from the public? Okay. Comments from the board. President Lanus.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Board Member Kennison, thank you for bringing the substitute motion. I absolutely will support because I think that there's some room for change. And thank you also, Board Member Lewis, for your comments. I think here, nobody's questioning whether or not the program is what it needs to be or whether or not it's effective or good. I think the question here is are we offering enough funding for us to spread this program out across our district? And what I would like to see us do over the course of the next week is to go back to the drawing board with Mr. Jaffian and the rest of his team and see what is it going to take for us to expand this program and whether or not we have the funding to do so. And if we do, let's make those changes and bring it back to our board so all board members can have the opportunity to vote on something that's more beneficial and equitable for more students to participate. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Like our president, I support the motion to report without recommendation, but I would like to make a general comment because everybody who's spoken has made very good points. Coach Lewis, Board Member Lewis with Dr. Finney with the comments about which schools are getting these fundings and so forth. But at the same time, the board's responsibility is ultimately on policy, right? And we have already made the decision, the board collectively, institutionally, not us individually, to have magnet schools, for example, to have kind of designated high-performing schools. That's a policy question which we may want to revisit over time, but that's one that's been made, and I'm uncomfortable, kind of making these broader policy decisions with all the very strong contextual points that each of you have made in the isolation over one specific individual contract for one specific program. So I think it's important that we take this back and think of this in the broader context, not try to fundamentally change a major policy which the board has already adopted, which can always be revisited in the context of $200,000 contracts. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gode?
Yes, thank you. Echoing a little bit what my colleague, Mr. Martin, said, one of the things that occur to me is that this is already January. And one of my comments I always make is don't let perfect get in the way of good. And we have a very good program here. Is it perfect? A lot of comments that have come out today said, no, it's not, but it's already January, and this is funding through the end of the year. I think from a policy perspective, we want to make the statement that says, yes, we support this, but coming up next year, you really need to have a plan that comes and supports more schools, provides transportation, do all the things that we want. Because right now, just trying to hold this contract isn't going to do any good for any of those students, because this is already January and we're already well more than halfway through the year. All it's going to do is take the a volunteer organization or a 501c3 organization that's trying to help us and sit here and hurt them in cash flow and hurt them in funding. I fully support all of the things about we need to expand this program. I agree 100%. But where we sit here today, are we really accomplishing anything other than hurting an organization that's trying to do this, that wants to work with us to do this, in delaying this? Or should we go ahead and approve it with the caveats that we want to see a better plan for next year as this works through? Because I feel like a lot of comments that Mr. Martin made about we're making policy decisions and focusing them on this one contract is correct. We need to take a broader picture, and like I said, I agree with all these things. We need to try to expand the program, but holding up this contract in January doesn't do anything to help the kids except hurt the organization that's trying to provide the support. So I just ask for my colleagues to think about that and dwell on that. There's no right or wrong answer on this, because I fully understand with the passion and where people are coming from on this, but we also need to be realistic about where we are. Thank you.
Okay, Board Member Kennison.
Just real quick, I think that appreciate what both of my colleagues are saying on either side of me. And if we had unlimited funds, sounds great. Let's put it through. But we don't. And the funds are tiny for the arts. And so we're talking about, sure, it's a relatively small amount of money, but percentage-wise, it can be large. And that can actually literally take away from arts in other schools, from the orchestras in other schools. And so I do think it's important that we step back and we take a look at it. And I do not think that waiting 1 week on a decision is going to cause any harm whatsoever.
Thank you. Any additional comments from the board? Okay, so we will now entertain a vote on the substitute motion to move this item forward without recommendation.
Please vote. The motion carries.
Item 5, Internet/WAN RFP selection. Consideration of a request for the approval of the recommendation of the committee for the selection of Cox Communication as the provider for Internet WAN services, and to authorize the superintendent and general counsel to negotiate and execute a contract. Strategic alignment, operational excellence, funding source, general fund. Can I get a motion for this item? Okay. It has been moved by Mr. Ballou and seconded by Mr. Martin. And we will now entertain comments from the board. Okay, seeing none, comments from, okay, thank you. Mr. Godey.
Yes, thank you. I guess this is Mrs. Jones's contract, but I would like to understand a little bit about how the amount we pay and then the amount with how the 90% E-rate goes into this, just because $2,600,000 is a big number. So I'd just like to understand the E-rate, and I would also like to understand what our cost in the past year has been versus this contract coming up for the next 3 years. Hope that's not too much.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Godey. Yes, we can explain the funding source, which is E-rate, which is FCC guided from USAC for the federal government. And our portion that the district pays is 10% of that $2 million over 3 years. So that breakdown for us as a district is for a year, $260,000, and I'm sorry, $86,000 for the year, and per month, $7,248. Our 10% portion. So the E-rate portion, the E-rate program provides in Category 1 funding a breakdown per district by your MFP fund that you qualify either for a 85-90% discount, and we are in the 90% category. Right now, actually, this contract with Cox will be less than we pay now. So we negotiated a contract that was for less. I don't have that right offhand, but I can get it for you for next board meeting. Yes.
Thank you. Any additional comments from the board? Okay, comments from the public? Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. Okay, this is Ms. Corley. Yes. Okay, Ms. Corley and Dr. Feeney.
Ms. Corley deferred. She'll be in after me. I'm still James Finney, and I have 2 points to make procedurally. I'll be brief because I'm ambivalent about this topic. First, you have an agenda item, but the motion was never read. Getting somebody to raise their hand and saying they move, what do they move? I would imagine the motion is to approve the recommendation of the committee for the selection of Cox Communication as the provider for internet WAN services and to authorize the superintendent and general counsel to negotiate and execute a contract. But I haven't heard that, and I think the public should hear that whenever you're ready to vote on something. If that is the motion, though, I would suggest a friendly amendment on somebody's part to take out the and execute, because I think all contracts should come back to the board for a quick rubber stamp, most likely on a consent agenda. But when you give the superintendent authority to execute contracts, I get very nervous. So I would suggest that you make a habit when you're running the meetings of making sure the motions are always explicitly read. Some people have visual difficulties and they need to have it read. Some people have auditory difficulties and they need to see it in writing, and various other combinations. But furthermore, I would strongly suggest you remove the words "and execute." Thank you.
Point of clarification. I believe I read the information, but if you guys would like for me to read it again, I can.
No, ma'am, there's no reason to. You read it into the record. I believe the motion was moved. Generally, when someone moves, it means to approve the item as read. So I don't believe there's any reason to reread it into the record.
Okay, thank you.
What you read was consideration of a request.
Ms. Corley?
Come back on this side. Thank you. Good afternoon, Karonda Corley, parent and National Disabilities Advocate, Corinth Corley, future self advocate. As it relates to the internet, I'm not sure if y'all actually have came to Northeast Elementary or Northeast High. We don't really have access to internet. Let me go a step further. When they try to give the students hotspots, they originally gave us T-Mobile hotspots. They don't work out there in our area. So they had to change the hotspots for our area and give us Verizon. Because Verizon is the only ones that work. Our superintendent can inform you that when they travel out in that area, their cell phones don't work. Because internet capability and access is extremely limited when you go into the rural areas such as Pride, where Northeast Elementary and High is located. And I would like to thank our principals at Northeast Elementary and High for their phenomenal work, along with all the staff there and the parents and all the kids, because they are there every single day without internet capabilities like we're supposed to have to actually be able to function. And so that's a problem, because we're supposed to educate the kids, but how exactly are we going to do that? Now, I know that we're talking about having Cox there, but have you checked to make sure that Cox actually work out there? Because Cox is not available to all of the people that live within the Pride, Baywood, Cheneyville areas that have students that go to Northeast Elementary and Northeast High. What is available out there is Verizon, in some areas Cox, and in some areas AT&T. And then you have some areas that are dead zones, which means that there is absolutely nothing. So I think that it would be extremely prudent of us to make sure that when we enter into a contract that is supposed to be for all, that we make sure that it is going to benefit all. Because every single time we come up here, it's always something that is taking funding from our general fund that have IDEA funding, ESSA funding, and Title II funding, all incorporated into that general funding, and yet nothing ever benefits our children with disabilities, which is problematic. Last but definitely not least, will internet be afforded to all the individuals tomorrow and Saturday for that board retreat that's in violation of ADA on behalf of our individuals with disabilities? Because I did send y'all that email. We waiting on our stipend and our voucher so that we could be at that meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, we will now move to comments from the board. Mr. Rust.
This is a question for our CTO, and forgive me, I have to learn your name better. Amy, thank you. As I was looking through the proposed contract, and so I saw that their provision is to provide, I think, up to 10 gig at the school board office, and then I believe 5 at each individual school. Is that correct?
No, sir. The Internet POP will have 10 gig capability here at the central office, and we have a secondary DMARC at the Sherwood PDC location, which is also a 10 gigabit pipe.
Okay.
So each school is connected through the wide area network with a 10 gig connection.
Okay.
From each school in the ring back to the central office.
Back to the central office.
Correct.
And then out as needed. So, as our CTO, you feel, I assume, that is sufficient for our needs in the next 3 years?
Absolutely. And one point that we built into the contract is the ability to upgrade as the equipment allows, so that we can go up to a 50 gig pipe as necessary. But as we have seen over the past years with online assessment, which was the primary focus in the beginning, we never reach more than 3 to 7 gigs of bandwidth at peak testing times of all schools. So we are more than assured that 10 gig right now is sufficient and have that ability to go up higher.
Yeah, that's where my concern lies, is if we run into another scenario where virtual, God forbid, becomes a significant burden for the system, is this going to be enough? And so if we run into that case and we do have to upgrade to, say, to a 50 gigabyte pipe, what is the apparatus for that? Is it we have to drop a new contract? Is there
No, that's what's built into the contract that we have now, the ability to do so as equipment permits.
would
And
we
so on
have
a-
to provide or purchase or rent
What
that
we would have
equipment?
to provide modules in our current equipment that would upgrade up to those speed capabilities, but the Cox equipment would be upgraded on the Cox side per the contract.
Okay, so end user side, so it's site-wide, we may have to do upgrades, but
Yes,
as an ISP, they would provide what we need from their end.
that's right.
Thank you.
And could I, if I could, answer to, first, Mr. Goday, it is a 19% savings. All right. And to the question of Northeast High and Elementary, we are providing this internet service and WAN connectivity to those schools now, forever, last week, last year, for as long as we've been networking. The misnomer is that it is not going to students' homes. We don't provide networking to students' homes. We provide it to our school sites, and that is where, and can only do so with E-rate funding. Dr. Narcisse.
If I could also add to the board, you will hear more about this. Ms. Jones and her team have been working on a 3-year plan overall for the infrastructure, academically and operationally for the school system. You'll see more of that soon to come. So that's a part of all of these processes, not only for emergencies, but also for acceleration for kids.
Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Martin.
Thank you. I appreciate Ms. Jones' clarification, and don't go too far. I've got a question for you, but I appreciate your clarification about the quality, the internet connection being at the schools. Although I will say that at some point in the near future, I'm going to encourage the board to move forward with my campaign trail promise to start having some of the board meetings in our public schools so we can see that and experience it for ourselves. My question for you, Ms. Jones, is are there performance metrics in place in this contract for uptime guarantees and things like that?
Absolutely. We have a 99.9% uptime guarantee on this contract.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Board Member Lewis.
You know, this comment or question, Amy, is not so much on the technical side, but I was on the front line when we were virtual, okay? And parents were in the homes with 3 or 4 kids, all on smart devices, not having the bandwidth. Parents were reaching out because, you know, no fault of the school system's fault. They owed Cox $480, you know, and the kids couldn't get their schoolwork done if they couldn't pay Cox $220. So, you know, there's a lot of things that, you know, with the internet and virtual learning and distance learning that I hope we learn from the pandemic, and we will be ready, you know, to combat those situations if they ever show up again. But the bandwidth in the homes was a major struggle for a lot of people.
And to that point, Mr. Lewis, we provided hotspots, and for all students who needed those during any hardship times during virtual, and were also able, if there were multiple children in the home, to offer more hotspots, or if they had classes at another home that didn't have internet connectivity, we provided that mechanism for connectivity. And moving forward in our high school grade band, we will be putting out, as we announced last month, all Chromebooks will have data embedded in them so that there will be data ready in the Chromebook itself without the need of a hotspot or home connectivity.
We just need to know that the public just needs to know that that's a viable option, that that's there for them.
Well, all high school students will go home with them. So yes, sir, there will be a mass communication out and a campaign of awareness.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Goday.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Jones, why are you still up here? No, I just, you know, because I was here during the whole time where we had to go virtual and do all of that. And I just want the public to understand that there was a great deal of work that was done to make sure connectivity was available to the families. Now, was it perfect? I can't say it was perfect, but you mentioned all of the hot spots. We also worked very diligently with the Housing Authority to put up hot spots with all the public housing. I know at one time we even had buses with hot spots on them that went around or something.
We did in our district, but we had community hotspots at each school location that blasted into the parking lots to sort of have a carpool line hotspot ability. And then did partner with T-Mobile and the libraries here who had the same program in place to do hotspots to the general public as well for checking out.
So I just wanted the public to know that that was not something that we stuck our head in the sand on. This contract specifically relates to internet at the school sites. But during the pandemic and other areas, there was a lot of work. And if I remember correctly, the survey came out that we had like 99.8 or 98% of our kids had adequate internet capability during the pandemic time frame, and I may be off a percent or two. Now, adequate may not be totally desired or that sort of thing, but it was something that was not swept under the rug, something we paid a lot of attention to and tried to make sure that everyone who needed internet to do their schoolwork got internet.
Absolutely.
So I just wanted everyone in the public to understand that that was a priority issue. Thank you.
Mr. Lanus?
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Just want to get our board again caught up to speed. One of the things that the last board did when we reviewed and looked over contracts was we wanted to make sure that we are thoroughly engaged around the performance of each contract, not only being thoroughly engaged, but also at the end of the duration of that contract, we looked to see whether or not we got the results that we were looking for. And if we didn't, and if we don't, we will not renew those contracts. So I just want to bring that up as a point of clarity because I heard board member Martin ask the question about the metrics. So that's something that we definitely are instituting right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shamlin?
Mr. Lannis made my statement, so thank you.
All right. I believe that is all of the comments. All right, we will now entertain a vote.
Please vote.
Point of order, for Mr. Finney's benefit, should we read the motion into the record before we take the vote? Oh, he already did? Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Mr. Lewis, did you have a comment? Okay. Okay.
But for clarification, this is board action to send without recommendation. Is that correct?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm on the wrong item. To send with recommendation.
The motion carries.
Thank you. Item 6, Seymour Selection Brownfields Project. Consideration of a request for the approval of the recommendation of the Seymour Selection Committee of Womack NRK Construction LLC to provide construction management at-risk Seymour services for the Brownfields Project, strategic alignment, operational excellence, funding source, tax plan. All right, can I get a motion? Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Lanus and seconded by Mr. Ballou. Comments from the board. Mr. Gode.
Yes, thank you. I would like to ask Ms. Scott Spalding, since we have so many new board members here, if you could just come up and we had an entire presentation on the CMAR process, but that is new to many of our board members. So I think it'd be very beneficial if you could just give a couple of minute overview of what the CMAR process is and what it entails. Thank you.
Sounds great. I'll ask my Chief of Physical Plant Services, Mr. Morales, to give you that summary.
Good afternoon and congratulations and welcome to the board. So thank you so much. The CMAR process is a construction manager at risk process. This is a fairly new process that the state has put in place to be able to allow to get your contract manager at risk. So your construction manager comes in and they work with your design team and your owner. And what they do is they help you implement the design of your project. Then they give you what's called a guaranteed maximum price. So once you have your scope of work defined, what does that design look like? Then they start shopping those prices for that labor and that material. And they also help you to pick out, maybe this roof product costs more, but it might be a better benefit. So you may pay a 5% increase on it, but it's a better product. And so you want to get that. Or, hey, I can get a roofing product for 10% cheaper and it has the same outcome. So we're going to strategically get this product and use it. And so they help you get your best bang for your buck and then give you a maximum price that's guaranteed. So then you sit down and you say, okay, we're going to do this project and we're going to get it for this price. They're the manager at risk, which means if it goes over, they're at risk. So they have skin in the game not to want to go over. Now, a construction manager does not self-perform. So because you pick your construction manager does not mean that they're your general contractor that does the work. They're a construction manager that goes get those contractors to do that work. And they may use one general contractor that'll employ 4 or 5 different subs. Then they go get another sub to do sheetrock work, another sub to do civil work. So they employ several different people, but they're your construction manager. And so ultimately it's to get a much better product and to guarantee a price, because the market is so volatile right now that a lot of people was getting bid prices and then you get within in the first 6 months and those prices are no longer any good. So I hope that it helps explain it to the best of my ability. I also provided a revised statute for you to review, which explains the CMAR process also.
Mr. Lanus?
Yes, Mr. Morales, the Seymour project process, it also allows you to, instead of piecemealing, let's say a construction management company expense here and also an architectural expense here, you can do them all together, which gives you a much better rate, correct?
You can. So the way it works is you can either put a project together and they can give you one lump sum price for it, or they can break it out and they do what they call early release packages. Mm-hmm. So that's another thing to help with timing. When you get to design a project, it may take you a year to design an entire project, right? Mm-hmm. But if you want to I want to go ahead and start with my civil work, which is all of my groundwork outside. Well, they'll put a package together and say, hey, this is your civil package and it's going to cost you $300,000. This is your guaranteed maximum price, and let's go ahead and put this out and execute this now, and while we still continue to work on the rest of your design. So you can do it multiple different ways. Yes, you can do it all as just one big lump sum, or you can do it to expedite and start doing it in some smaller breakout. So it gives you flexibility, again, versus a traditional bid where you have to get through all of design.
Thank you. And also just for further clarity, when you talk about this word of consolidation of schools, this is going to be the perfect project to look at, because we're actually merging White Hills Elementary with Brownfield Elementary, which is a perfect solution, because now White Hills is being taken out of a dilapidated building and they're going into a brand new, fully state-of-the-art building that's going to benefit not only the students but the entire staff at both of those campuses. So I just wanted to use that as a point of, again, clarity and update, just for everybody to just keep an eye on that. Thank you.
Mr. Martin?
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I deal with CMAR contracts in my day job, handling real estate for LSU all the time, and our experience has been extremely positive with the CMAR process. One of the examples I like to share is, everybody knows LSU's nice tile roofs, right? That nice Spanish tile, very attractive. And we normally, when we do our traditional process, we have a specification, right? This is the tile that we get, and it's exactly that tile. It's the price, and that's part of the design specification goes out to bid. Well, the first time we did a CMAR process that called for designing a building with some of the clay tile roofs, the contractor said, hey, look, here's this other product, right, that I could buy instead, and from the ground it's going to look exactly the same. It's got these different characteristics, but from the ground it's going to look exactly the same. It's going to perform as or longer than your clay tile roof. We went with that suggestion, and we saved $200,000 just on the roof tiles alone, right? If we had not had the contractor engaged in a CMAR process, then we would have never had that discussion, right? We would never have had the contractor able to provide their insight about what the real pricing in the market was at a time when it could really make a difference. So it's been extremely valuable and allowed many, many projects at LSU to come in on time and under budget. It's been very valuable for us.
Thank you for that feedback. That's another benefit of it too, is when you have a traditional project that's specified bid, those contractors are very leery to get up front and say, hey, you should use a different tile because you specified this. In this process, they have more skin in the game, so they want to step up, they want to save money, and they want to give you a good solution. They don't want to give you a problem, they want to give you a solution with a benefit to it, because then everybody wins.
Any additional comments from the board? Okay, comments from the public. Dr. Feeney?
Thank you. I appreciate Mr. Goday's attempt to get that last motion read into the record. If we're assuming that the motion is whatever was in the text in the agenda, other than the words consideration of a request for thee, then let me point out that this does not authorize execution of a contract. The motion is simply to accept the recommendation of one of 4 proposals. And so I would hope that the administration wouldn't take that inch and make a mile out of it and sign a contract. Because I'm curious to see how expensive this will be, what the timeline is. I'm also curious why the schools merged for the fall, and they're finally deciding on a construction manager in January. It would seem as though before you kick the kids out of a school and put them in what Mr. Lannis describes as a dilapidated facility, that you might want to have already had the plan for how you're going to replace the school that's been vacated. And so I would hope the next time you're getting ready to rebuild a school, there be a plan well ahead of time for displacing the students for as short a time as possible. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Feeney. Ms. Corley?
You gonna tell them hello? You gonna tell them your name? Okay. Okay. Okay, Karonda Corley, parent and disabilities advocate nationally. Corinth Corley, self-advocate future. When we talk about construction, we never take into consideration making sure that the projects that our buildings are in ADA compliance. Here I go again. Federal law, American Disabilities Act, seems to get y'all every time. ADA requires for the building to be in ADA compliance. So let me tell you some things that are in ADA compliance. A ramp. We have stairs there, but we have a ramp back there. Now, in compliance with ADA, our people with disabilities should not have to walk all the way around to get to that ramp, to be able to come up there and sit on that platform like you're doing. Our people with disabilities, because this here is just one door, so a person that has a 4-point walker or a wheelchair or crutches cannot get through that door. But they have to go all the way around, whichever way they want to go, left or right, to get to the double doors back there. That's not in ADA compliance. See, ADA compliance means that you are not supposed to put that person with disabilities out of their way. In compliance with ADA also means that these mounted up screens that we have that cast the glare, because we have the wrong lighting and we have them positioned in the wrong angles, so the lighting is actually projecting a glare for those individuals that are visually impaired, have anything like CVI or TVI, or may actually just be going blind, or have bifocals, or wear glasses like myself, and like it's a lot of y'all up here with glasses. So when you try to look at them and you see the light is going to cast a glare in it, and then what does it do? It causes a strain on your eyes and causes you to get a headache. these are things that fall up under American Disabilities Act that is never taken into consideration as it relates to project management and construction. And that is something that I am here speaking on. Brownsville Elementary do have students with disabilities that attend there. We do have children with autism and many other disabilities that are federally covered, but they will not be able to safely matriculate into the building because they're not taken into consideration when we build this new building. So when you take into consideration this CMAR selection, it always needs to be making sure that ADA is always at the forefront. I know all of you will be old if God bless you with the ability to live to be that age, and that means you will be disabled too, because you come into this world as a child, but you leave back out as a child, hopefully. So please make that a strong consideration and a recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Corley. Any other comments from the public? Okay, comments or questions from the board? All right, seeing none, we will entertain a vote.
Please vote. The motion carries.
Item 7, professional services contract, domain architecture. Consideration of a request for the approval of a professional services contract between the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board and Domain Architecture in the amount of $50,708. Such amount to be adjusted based on state contract fees for the CTEC Culinary Project, Strategic Alignment, Exemplary Customer Service, Funding Source, CTEC General Fund. May I have a motion, please?
Second.
Okay. It has been moved by Mr. Goday and seconded by Mr. Russ. Thank you. And comments from the board. Mr. Lanus.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Is Ms. Spalding in the room? Come on down, Ms. Spalding. And this will be real brief. I just want you to just give some clarity around how we got to this space of adding culinary arts to our CTEC school from the donation that we received on behalf of our community. Thank you.
Excellent. So thank you for the question. So first and foremost, CTEC has a warming kitchen. That was part of the original design, but now we're adding the culinary arts program. We received a $50,000 grant from the North Baton Rouge Economic Development nonprofit organization, and they are supporting us with not only dual enrollment courses that are available, but also project availability through the new culinary arts kitchen. Any other questions?
Mr. Rust?
So if I understand correctly, and I don't know anything about what a warming kitchen is, but I can assume, but you're either modifying or adding a fully functional kitchen to this facility with this grant?
That is correct. And so currently, our child nutrition program provides food that's prepared at another place, right, to be able to support the students that are at CTEC. And so that's what the warming kitchen allows them to do, to serve hot food to the participants. And the fully commercial kitchen will allow our instructors to come in and teach our students all of the skills related to culinary arts.
Excellent. Further clarification, maybe Dr. Narcisse or Mr. Shamlin can answer is in their consideration, so the phrase "such amount to be adjusted based on state contract fees." Can you explain that? Or maybe whomever.
So, sorry. The way the process works for a bid project is you have a professional record, your design services, which is domain architecture in this case. And the way that they operate is they operate off of a state fee schedule. You start off with available funds for construction, and what happens is they give you a cost analysis based on the scope of work that you provided. So in this case, we gave them a scope of work. You're going to take this warming kitchen, you're going to turn it into a full-on production kitchen. This is kind of what it's going to entail. So they gave a cost analysis on each scope of work. you plug that budget number into the state fee schedule calculator, and it gives you that fee. The reason it says plus or minus is because now once the project is bid and you award this, they're going to design it. Once it's actually bid, then let's say the bid comes back for that's based on 500,000, 450,000. That fee is actually going to go down based off of that state fees calculator. Or if it comes in at 550,000, it's going to go up a little bit based on that state fee schedule calculator.
Okay, so that kind of $500,000 number in the documentation, that's essentially an upfront, like a cost estimate, but it has not been bid out yet.
That's just a cost analysis, correct. So that way we can get under contract with them to say, okay, let's go ahead and design this project.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Martin?
Sorry, thank you. Just want to add on to what he was saying. Basically, the state doesn't allow public projects to consider price in the selection of architects, right? Or engineers usually either, for design projects. They want those made on the basis of the quality of the architect and so forth. And so that's why there's a state fee established for architects doing public work. And it's just, that's what their fee is a percentage of the ultimate cost. And so, just wanted to add that clarification.
Mr. Gode?
Yes, thank you. Just for a quick question, this money is coming from CTEC General Fund. I've never heard of a CTEC General Fund. and the other part is the cost estimate of $500,000. If we go ahead and build this, where's the $500,000 coming from?
So part of it will come from the general fund through the plant operations budget.
Okay.
And the other part of that will come through workforce development funding that is managed through CTEC.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, any additional comments from the board? Okay, comments from the public. Dr. Feeney?
Thank you. Just in case anybody missed the beginning, my name is James Finney. Mr. Gode, I appreciate your comments, and I'll make a couple follow-up points. I don't recall that this board has approved a culinary arts program at CTEC. Sounds like a great idea, but for it to suddenly come into existence without having been approved by the board is not a good idea. It's a public school system that's supposed to be run by publicly elected officials, not the superintendent or his administration. And furthermore, we heard where the money's coming from, but you have the budgetary authority, and I don't recall, I could be mistaken, but I don't recall that you have approved $500,000 worth of construction. Again, it's probably a good idea to have a culinary arts program if in fact there is student demand, which may or may not be the case. But let's not get the cart before the horse. Don't design something and then say, well, it's designed, we've got to build it now. Figure out that you want it, put that on the agenda, decide how you're going to pay for it, put that on the agenda, and then it would be sensible to design the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Feeney. Ms. Corley?
Okay, lower the mic for me. Karonda Corley, Parent Disabilities Advocate. Corinth Corley, Future Self Advocate. I've toured CTEC, and CTEC is not in compliance as it relates to ADA for individuals with disabilities. In fact, under Louisiana Parent Bill of Rights, I'm formally requesting a public records request as of right now for the number of individuals with IEPs and 504s that have actually benefited from the programs at CTEC, because I am aware of only one student ever matriculating through CTEC, and that one student was wheelchair bound. And unfortunately, the staff and everyone else had to open doors and stuff for that student because the building is not in ADA compliance, which is rather absurd and rather disheartening considering that that is one of our newer buildings. Broadmoor Elementary is another new building that we spent more than $30 million to renovate, build from the ground up. and it's not in ADA compliance either. Our children that are wheelchair bound will have to have staff and their parents to open up the door and hold the door for them. Again, this room, we renovated this to how much, Dr. Narcisse? Like almost $1 million. And again, other people have to open up the door for people that are wheelchair bound, have any type of orthopedic impairment. We're not in ADA compliance. So when we talk about a professional service contract, who are we really servicing? It's not the kids. We doggone sure not living up to our motto that says every student every day. Can my child matriculate through the building if he have on his AFO splints with plantar flexion and orthopedic shoes without help? Probably not. If he had to go back through the casting series, would he be able to matriculate through that building? Absolutely not. So we need to know what type of things you're going to put in place. But this is something that should have came before us that actually had children with disabilities at the forefront, because children with disabilities want to be a part of the workforce too. There was a very nice story that ran on Good Morning America about a woman that is wheelchair bound that is working in the occupation of nursing. Individuals with disabilities would like to be in the workforce. However, Louisiana loses more than $100 billion due to individuals with disabilities not being considered in the education arena so that they could be in the workforce. If you need to know where I got that number from, LSU did that study and published that report. So anytime you have any questions as it relates to our children with disabilities, I am always here to answer it willingly, happily, and available and all day and all night. Thank you. Tell them thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Corley. All right. Any other comments from the public? All right. Comments or questions from the board? Mr. Godin. Okay. All right. Anyone else within? Okay, Ms. Kennison.
Dr. Narcisse, can you speak directly to Dr. Finney's questions about is there currently a culinary arts program? Also, the $500,000, is there a plan in place for that? And then if you could also speak directly to, I'm sorry, I don't know her name yet. What system do we have in place to make sure that our architecture is ADA compliant?
Mr. Morales?
So a couple things. So the first one, the district does have pro-start kitchens in the district already, so this is an expansion of that program by adding this kitchen into a production kitchen. To answer the question on the ADA compliance, so all projects have to have ADA compliance. Your fire marshal does inspections before they give you occupancy. What the fire marshal is looking for is for you following ADA codes and compliance. So the same thing like this door. You don't necessarily have to have a double door here. You have to have a double door available. And also it depends if you're doing a remodel versus a new construction as to what is feasible and what is possible in that renovation that you have. So all of that plays a large factor, but the fire marshal has to sign off after the end of any design. Before it even bids, before you even put out for bid, the fire marshal has to say, hey, your drawings have been approved by the fire marshal's ADA compliance and code enforcement. And then once you do the project and you build it, they come out and do a final inspection and say, you can occupy this building, you can occupy it safely.
Good evening, Superintendent Narcisse, President Lannis, board members. My name is Amber Renee Boyd. I am the director of CTEC, the proud director of CTEC. I have been there since the end of September. I am glad to say that we currently service over 230 students at CTEC. And for those of you who aren't familiar with what we do, we are a program, not a school, because we service all high schools in our region. We service all students in our region. Every student, every day. We have LEP students, limited English proficiency. We have ESS students. We have 504 students. The purpose of our program is to bring students that don't have career options at their local high school and ensure that they have an equitable and equal access through CTEC. So if you're a student at Broadmoor High School and you are interested in being an automotive technician, then Broadmoor doesn't offer that. So what do? You get to go to CTEC. You come for half a day every other day, and we ensure that you leave with dual enrollment credits through BRCC, as well as ASC industry credentials, which earns SPS points for Broadmoor High School. So we are extremely proud about that. Our culinary arts program is going to add another pathway to our program. So right now we have, and I'm speaking off, I think we have 2 or 3 culinary programs within the district. Off the top of my head, I know that Estrema has one, and I know that Woodlawn High School has Mr. Oob, and they're getting a food truck. They have a fantastic program. But outside of that, if you're at another high school and you're interested in culinary arts and you want to get ServSafe and you want to get ProStart and you want to go into Louisiana Culinary Institute, what do? What are your options? So we have already been recruiting to show that we have interest in the program. This is going to open up 25 spaces at CTEC. That's going to service all of our high school students. And we already have 12 applicants from our local high schools that want to be in the program and want to do culinary arts next year. So we're really excited about that. Miss Seeley, my executive director, and I, we invite you to CTEC. One of our favorite things to do is showcase the program. It is amazing. It is a Taj Mahal facility, and we look forward to being a model for not only EBR, but for the state. And then we want other districts around the country to come and visit us. So we're excited.
Good. I wanted to speak to her. She's
Amber.
Amber. Amber, you could have answered from back there. What about your transportation? Have you gotten that?
Yes, sir. We are working diligently in partnership with transportation. We have done a transportation boot camp in November, and then we did another one in January. And just today, we had another great team meeting where we talked about making sure that all stakeholders know their responsibilities, that the kids are at the right stop, the parents know where the right stop is, the school knows any changes. The bus drivers know the routes, they're running them. Our attendance on A-Days, we have 137 kids that are actually come on A-Days at CTEC. And Tuesday and Thursday was an A-Day. We had 125 in attendance, which surpasses the attendance rate at the high schools. And then today we had 100 and I think it was 18 or 19. I don't remember the exact number. So we're really excited about bringing up that attendance. We can't teach invisible people, and we want to make sure that they're there. We have been calling parents, calling kids, nagging kids, what educators do. And transportation has been helping with this. I know that they're even pushing forth an effort to do some things like ride the routes, look and make sure that we're adding activity buses. I mean, they're working with us. It's been a good improvement.
All right.
Thank you. And you come by and visit us, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Golding? Okay. Mr. Golding?
Yes, I just, comments have been made here, and I just wanted to give my thoughts on some of those comments. One is, this is an expansion of an existing academic program, and the academic programs come under the purview of our superintendent. That's not a policy decision per se. It's a decision for the superintendent and his staff. And secondly, we do have a fiduciary responsibility, but from what I understand, our fiduciary responsibility comes when we pass the budget, and in passing that budget, we put money in Ms. Scott Spalding's budget for capital projects, small capital projects such as this. So it's not that we're batting a blind eye to any of this. It's just that some of these things don't require or shouldn't require necessarily formal board approval to be able to do this. Because if every item like this came up before the board, we'd be here till, well, we can't be here past 9 o'clock, but we'd be here forever going through a bunch of mundane items that really aren't policy related. So I disagree with Mr. Finney. He and I agree sometimes, we disagree sometimes. This is one where I disagree. I think this is totally in the purview of our superintendent and totally within the budget. Now, if they surpass that budget and go out of bounds of the money we've already allocated to Ms. Scott Spalding for capital improvements, then yes, definitely they have to come back. But, you know, that's kind of the way the process works. If we have to approve every step of everything that goes along, we would become the bottleneck for preventing this district from going forward. So I just wanted to have those comments out there. Thank you for putting up with me.
Mr. Martin?
I'll learn that one of these days. I agree with Mr. Goday's comments. I guess again, we're asking a lot of process questions today, right? Because we're all so new. So is this, because I guess when I had first read that agenda item earlier in the week, my assumption was like the board had already voted, we're going to have an expansion of the CTEC thing as a matter of policy or whatever. What I hear Mr. Goday saying is really, no, that's just a budgetary item that you've been administering, which is fine. So I just want to get some clarification on that question, that issue.
Yes, that is correct. Once the board approves the budget and it's within that purview, I have the authority to allocate how that goes within that project. And so it's always within the budget of each of the chiefs that are over those sets of departments.
And so then this item comes to us for consideration simply because our policy manual requires board approval of all contracts over a certain dollar threshold.
That is correct. The approval, the threshold for the approval is anything over $10,000. And we have a budget of almost 600 million, and then there's also special revenues.
No, I agree. Well, we're all getting up to speed. Okay, thank you. That's the explanation I was looking for. Thank you, Superintendent. I support this item.
Mr. Ballou?
Thank you. Real quick, I just wanted to thank Ms. Boyd for her comments. She's got me fired up. I'm hate that we're almost finished with the meeting now. I finally woke up.
Mr. Lanas?
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I don't have too much to say on this item. I just want to say you did a fantastic job conducting this meeting tonight, and I think you hold the new record. All right, I think she holds the new record for the fastest meeting, so I have my competition out from here. Thank you.
All right, so I guess that is the end of our comments. Calling for a vote.
Please vote. The motion carries.
All right. All right. We made it through our first meeting. Okay, so we made it through our first meeting, and now we're to the announcements. So here we are. Our announcements of meetings include the following. The board retreat to be held January 13th, 9 a.m. until 5 p.m., and the 14th, 8 a.m. until 12:30 p.m., 2023 at Phelps Dunbar LLP, 1 Canal Place, Office Tower, 365 Canal Street, New Orleans, Louisiana. Regular board meeting is to be held on January 19, 2023 at 5 p.m. in the Central Office Boardroom. Committee of the Whole meeting is to be held on February 2nd, 2023 at 5 p.m. in the Central Office Boardroom. All right, if we can entertain a motion to adjourn. All right. Enjoy.